Another leftist so-called scholar has surprised the world by radiating contempt for marriage. But let's take a look at how she's woven in cultural Marxist racialism. Yeah, the idea that marriage pushes white supremacy. It's all part of her smothering narrative fabrication. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV, and here's the story. Benjamin Vogel reports for the College Fix that George Mason University professor Bethany Letiecq released the hounds of useless, multisyllabic word salad to let married people, the engaged, or those hoping to wed the love of their lives know that they're not thinking for themselves and are, in fact, responding like trained animals to a vast, centuries-long conspiracy of white male malevolence. Oh yeah, the patriarchy, it's right in there, in case you wondered. Notes Vogel, quote, marriage fundamentalism advances white supremacy, according to a George Mason University professor. I theorize that marriage fundamentalism, like structural racism, is a key structuring element to white heteropatriarchal supremacy. Professor Bethany Letiecq wrote in the Journal of Marriage and Family, marriage fundamentalism can be understood as an ideological and cultural phenomenon where adherents espouse the superiority of the two-parent married family, she wrote. Well, at least it's just a theory and she's open to discussion of, maybe she's not open to discussion about it. Writes Vogel, quote, she did not respond to 2 emailed requests for comment on her views sent in the past 3 weeks. Well, so much for Socratic dialogue, huh? Letique employs critical family theorizing to delineate an overarching orientation to structural oppression and unequal power relations that advantages white heteropatriarchal nuclear families and marginalizes others as a function of marriage fundamentalism. So, despite having more than our fill of critical race theory and critical literature studies, i.e. deconstructionism, we now get critical family theorizing. The act of criticizing you for your choice of getting married or respecting the institution of marriage, while said critic also tells you that you're ignorant of your own reasons for thinking the way you do, that you just don't know any better. You're not as enlightened as she, and you can't recognize the ways you've been suckered by institutional pressures from society that perpetuate unequal power relations and white male domination, and which also marginalize others. Well, curiously, researchers from multitudinous institutions in numerous nations have shown that this evil institution that Letique seems to think harms non-whites, called marriage, well, it's strongly correlated with greater prosperity and lower crime for non-whites. Even as far back as 1965, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, then Assistant Secretary of Labor for President Johnson, issued a lengthy tax-funded report on the importance of the nuclear family in promoting prosperity for the members of the family and the society at large. Decades later, the Heritage Foundation found that the poverty rate for single-parent families was 80% higher than for married couples with children. And, quote, children living in single-parent homes are 50% more likely to experience poverty as adults when compared to children from intact married homes. And in his wide-ranging, evidence-filled 2023 book, Social Justice Fallacies, Hoover Institution scholar and economist Thomas Sowell noted that with the rise of Johnson's unconstitutional welfare handout, the Great Society programs, which have been perpetuated and expanded in subsequent national and state government policies and, of course, promoted in the media to everyone's detriment but the politicians, well, crime rates and out-of-wedlock birth rates exploded in minority communities. Yet, as Sowell points out, in the 2 decades prior to the 60s, minority communities saw declining crime rates. Sowell also observed that prior to the Great Society and the growth of so-called victim culture, out-of-wedlock birth rates were lower among minority groups than among the majority white population. But, quote, intellectual elites, politicians, activists, and leaders who took credit for the black progress that supposedly all began in the early 1960s took no responsibility for the painful retrogressions that demonstrably did begin in the 1960s. And today, notes Vogel, quote, marriage scholar Brad Wilcox disagrees with the George Mason professor Letique. Marriage is an institution that has advanced the common good in many civilizations, from Europe to the Americas and from Asia to Africa, Wilcox told The Fix via email. Marriage benefits children of all racial and ethnic backgrounds, the University of Virginia sociologist and director of the National Marriage Project wrote. He also recently published a book about the benefits of marriage. He pointed The Fix to several articles he wrote that show the importance of married fathers and the harms of single-parent households. And then there's this. What is Letique to tell the media-adored, oft ill-defined LGBTQ community, whatever that is, anytime the term's used as a political cudgel to acquire more power and play favorites? What will she tell all those folks who fought for gay marriage? In 2006, I had the opportunity to write a piece for the Mises Institute entitled Don't Let Government Define Marriage or Optimal Child-Rearing Environments. It allowed me to reveal much of the troubling history behind the massive error of putting the religious institution of marriage into the hands of the human-controlled state. The article reached readers at about the time when LGBTQ lobbies were pushing for state and national politicians to make the legal term marriage apply to unions of same-sex couples. Perhaps these people, too, are working for the evil white supremacy. Is that right? For the patriarchy? Is that what one is to take from this George Mason professor? Or is it more likely that her claims about marriage are unfounded and absurd and are offered to continue promoting the canard that Americans live in a culturally oppressive society and they don't even realize it? That, of course, they must be shown the light of leftism. And, of course, they must be led to the nirvana of government making everything equal based on political control. Yes, the equality of being subjects in an increasingly tyrannical United States. You know, it's one thing to note the danger of putting the definition of marriage into the hands of government. It's another thing to claim that the original institution of marriage is dark and nefarious. Hopefully, people will be able to see the difference, even as propagandists try to claim that the idea of holy matrimony is somehow racist and devilish. Thanks for watching, one and all. Please like and subscribe to us. Follow us on Rumble, where they don't censor us. Rumble, MRC-TV over there. Join the growing crowd. You can also share these videos far and wide, and find us still on YouTube, where the censorship always potentially looms. Find us all the time at MRCTV.org, MRCTV.org. See what the whole team is doing there. Check out the MRC-TV store and consider donating to the Media Research Center. You can also find us on TikTok and Instagram, and of course inside Twitter/X. Share some of the posts over there. You can find me over at Gab as @GardnerGoldsmith, and on Twitter/X it's Gard Goldsmith, G-A-R-D. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.